Thank you.
Can you hear me in the back? Most important question. Okay, great. Shavua Tov, welcome. I guess I say welcome to myself because you're all regulars here. So I thank you for allowing me to come, hopefully inspire a little bit. But before we get there, I just want to share my feeling right now. I don't know, we're on a Zoom class together. I know Rav Shmuley. And, he told me, want to come down, share something, and to walk into a room on a Saturday night. As was said, the Giants are playing, which, I'll be honest, in my shul they were supposed to do something tonight and they canceled. They said, listen, we can't compete. So, to come here and to see not just, a few people coming together to relax, to learn, to connect, to inspire, is always an incredible thing. But on a Saturday night, on a busy Saturday night, I personally am completely moved by looking at such a room. Jews coming together to grow a little bit, to connect a little bit, I think is amazing. So as they say in Hebrew, Ashrecha, praiseworthy. And usually you end with the tefillah, you end with the prayer, but I'm going to begin with the prayer. And I'm going to begin with the tefillah. And I guess it's a blessing, it's a bracha to Rav Shmuley, to Rav Avi, to Rav Yossi, that God willing, all the events should have this wonderful problem. Finding more chairs, making more space, and God willing, continuously connecting and growing all together. So tonight, just beginning night. Okay. Did I do something wrong? Should I continue? Okay. The light isn't purposeful this way. There you go. So, I want to discuss tonight two fundamental ideas. The first idea, I don't know if anyone here ever thought about, but who? That's nice. That's a real rabbi. He's putting it all together. Not letting someone else bring the lights. He's coming here and he's making it happen. So, I don't know if anyone ever thought about the following question. Who is the greatest human being to ever live?
My wife.
There you go. The timing! That was impeccable. We did not make that up beforehand. That was on the nose. Wow. The greatest human being to ever live. So, as we start going down memory lane, we go into our minds, we go back hundreds and thousands of years thinking through Jewish history, the greatest human being. So one might suggest, let's look at who, at the end of their life, returned their soul to heaven with a clean slate. Not one blemish. Is such a thing possible? No. There were four Jews. I just heard one of them. 4 Jews that managed to live their lives, not one sin. But I believe, and I've done this in many places. So who are the 4 Jews? And we get a few, we get Amram, Yishai, Kilov. But these aren't names that I think most people really feel the greatest person. So who's the greatest person to ever live? Probably, if I were to take a poll, I'd get King David, David HaMelech. One might suggest Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon, the wisest man ever. And perhaps those who are thinking a little deeper, a little further back, will go to the greatest leader of the Jewish people ever, Moses Rabbeinu. The only human being ever to talk face to face with God. But the question asks itself, but he sinned. When he returned his soul after 120, it was not perfectly clean. To the point, how many people here have been in Jerusalem have been in Israel? Many? Many? Thank God. Moshe never stepped foot into the promised land. Why? Because he sinned. So the question is, if he sinned, he got punished. Why is he the greatest person to ever live? Why isn't the greatest person those who manage to live their life perfectly clean, unblemished? And the answer, I believe, is obvious, and I'm sure by now the minds are working. Because life, we're not here to make sure that we don't stumble and fall. We're not here to return our soul after 120 pristine white. What are we here to do? What did Moshe Rabbeinu, thank you, what did Moses do? He was the greatest leader. He accomplished the most ever. That is something that each and every one of us is possible to do. On our own level. To accomplish, to grow, as someone screamed out. Not just to make sure we don't fall. We're going to fall. We're human beings. Proof is, there's only 4 people ever to not. And the rest of us, yes, we're going to fall. And we're going to fall again. Sometimes we're not going to even know we're falling. We're so deep in the mud. But one day we're going to wake up. We're going to show up on a Saturday night. We're going to have some good food. We're going to connect with friends. And our minds are going to ignite a little bit. And we're going to start thinking, maybe I could be a drop back. A drop. One little bit. Grow. Accomplish something. To leave this world and not have on our tombstone the words that we see, beautiful, loving, caring, all amazing things. Accomplishment is why we're here. So for a few moments, let's delve into, if we all could agree that Moshe was the greatest human being ever, let's look at his life for a few minutes. Let's think, how did this man, a mere mortal, merit to reach the lofty heights of talking to God? So some might remember when he was born, little baby Moses, there was a light in the room. Some might recall hearing he was born circumcised, perfect. It seems almost that this mere mortal was a God-gifted creature. That Hashem said, you're perfect. And he went and he utilized his perfection. However, those who know a little bit more start to recall, could Moses get up here and talk like this? Not that I'm talking so nicely, but at least I'm not slurring my words. There's no lisp. There's no speech impediment. He clearly wasn't perfect. He couldn't talk. When God told him to go to Pharaoh, what did he respond? I can't talk. I have a heavy lip. To the extent, who spoke? He didn't speak. He needed Aaron, very good, to come with him and talk for him. Doesn't sound like such a perfect person. But I like to share the following insight, which perhaps is slightly controversial, but even controversial things we can learn from. There's a sefer, it's called the Tiferes Yisrael. It's the end of Kedushin, Tractate Kedushin, and he writes the following. We're all familiar with the story of the splitting of the sea. The sea split. Did only one sea split? No. Throughout the entire world, every body of water, every cup, every entity split. To the point someone could have been in miles, years away. They also witnessed the splitting of the sea. After Kriyas Yamsuf, the splitting of the sea, the kings of the world wanted to understand these people, the Jewish nation. Their leader, Moses, he split the sea. Who is this person? And they wanted to study who is Moshe. They hired artists. Artists to go study the face of Moshe, paint a picture, but not a painting that we could hang on our walls, not a painting to put in a museum, a painting that they were going to study. They were going to have magicians, witchcraft, whatever it was, that know how to read faces, read palms. And they were going to sit there with the face of Moshe and delve into who was this person. If this is a man, the greatest leader leading the Jewish people, marching straight through an ocean, splitting, we have to understand who this person was. Writes the Tiferes Yisrael, the painters came and they painted a magnificent portrait of Moshe. Wonderful. They brought it in, they called in. I'm sure there's fancy names for people that study faces. Anyone know? No? Okay, I'm happy I'm not the only one.
Physiognomist.
There you go. I am not going to repeat it because I'm not going to get it right. But it was something agonists with a fizzy at the beginning. And they called him into our room and they said, study this man. And the kings wanted to understand, they wanted to replicate. If this is a leader, we want to be a leader. Let's learn who is this person. And they sat there studying the face of Moshe. And they wrote up a report and they gave it to the king. And the king opens this letter, reads this report, and he says, no, you must have given me the wrong one. What do you mean? They're expecting to see charismatic, wonderful, kind-hearted, incredible leader. They didn't see any of those words. They saw evil-spirited. Evil-spirited? Moshe? The greatest leader ever? Evil-spirited? And from here, with other such adjectives, from here the Tiferes Yisrael and other wonderful books of thought conclude, was Moshe perfect? Was Moses born in a place destined for greatness? Absolutely not. Perhaps if there was a high school yearbook, he would not have been voted most likely leader. He would have been the exact opposite. But he was a person that worked on himself. He was a person that connected with other people day in and day out. Sitting in an opulent palace, he could have sat there. He's sitting, being brought up in Pharaoh's household. You know what he could have said? I'm living the high life. It's true, I'm a Jew. But you know what? This is the situation I was thrown in. I'm just going to hang out here. But what did he do? He went out. Vayar b'sivlosam, he went to see his brethren. What are the other Jews doing? How do they feel? Connect with them on a personal level. So this incredible human being, the man who by far accomplished more than anyone ever and anyone will, was not one that was perfect. He was far from it. But how did he get there? To quote the words, someone here told me that they learned with someone related to Per. I can't really see anything right now, so there you go. I see a bright light here and a few over there. But to quote, his name is Rabbi Yechiel Per, the following line. When I heard this line, it's something I try to live my life on every day. Life is a downward escalator. If you stop, what happens? You're just pulled down. But if you keep on climbing, you keep on trying, and the truth is, the Vilna Gaon, the Gura in Mishlei, writes the exact same thing. Life is about growth, as someone screamed out. Life is about trying. Life is about accomplishments. So if we're going to try to tap into ourselves, and we want to leave legacies of accomplishment, we want to tap into a Moshe, a Jewish people. We want to be a leader, and a leader doesn't mean you're on the front cover of the paper. I'll be honest. I never knew Scarsdale existed. I never knew this place certainly existed. But someone who's day in and day out gathering together and making events like this, that's incredible. That's accomplishment. That's not just someone sitting back and saying, live life as it comes. So if we all want to do that, we have to be able to say, yeah, I'm not perfect. My circumstances are less than ideal. My temperament, the way God created me, maybe is, less than desirable. But you know what? I'm going to get up, and I'm going to work, and I'm going to ultimately do something. And that's lesson number one I wanted to share with everyone here today. Anyone that's connected to the weeks that we're reading in Shul each Shabbos, the Torah portions, reading about Moshe, reading about Moses, listening to the miracles. We have to be able to connect in a deep way and say, I also want to be like Moshe. And you know what's incredible? Rav Moshe Feinstein, another incredible Jew with the name Moshe, I'm sure many people heard the name. He writes, the pasuk says, Hu Moshe, Hu Aharon. He explains, Aharon, Moshe's sidekick, Aaron, was equal to Moshe. 1 second, Rabbi, you just spent the last 12 minutes telling us that Moshe was the greatest. How could Aaron be equal to Moshe? And he explains that if you do, part one is, if you fulfill your potential, many other Sfarim write similarly, you are at the level of Moses. Let's repeat those words again. If you fulfill your personal potential, whatever that may be, you leave this world accomplishing what you were supposed to accomplish. You are as great as Moshe. But then he continues and says another line. And this is a empowering line. You know why Aaron was equal to Moshe? Because Aaron had his job and Moshe had his job. Aaron spoke, Moshe did this. Everyone, every cast character has to play their role. If everyone wants to be the main actor, it's not such a great play. But if everyone realizes there's the main actor, there's the supporting cast, there has to be the janitor as well. If you don't have the janitor, the place is going to be a wreck. So says Rav Moshe Feinstein, when you do what you're supposed to do, you are on that high, incredible, lofty level as Moshe himself. But I'd like to further this one step deeper. Let's go a little bit more into the storyline. For those that know the story, I hope I don't bore you for a moment as I retell it. For those who are unfamiliar or don't remember, we'll remind ourselves of the story. The Jewish people are in Egypt. They're sitting there, backbreaking labor, building pyramids, horrible conditions. One day, in walks this Jew named Moshe and tells the Jewish people, guess what, guys? God is going to redeem us. We're going to get out of here. We would think, what would happen? L'chaim. We're going. Says the verse, Lo yishamu, the people didn't hear the words of Moses. Why not? Says the Torah, why not? Because of their hard work, because of their backbreaking labor, they weren't able to hear what Moshe said. Okay, the storyline continues. God comes back to Moses and says, go to Pharaoh. Tell Pharaoh, God is going to redeem his people. Moshe responds the following cryptic response. If the Jewish people couldn't hear my message, how will Pharaoh hear my message? End of quote. Moshe to God. Inquiring minds are all wondering, that makes no sense. I just explained, why did the Jewish people not listen? Why did they not hear the words of Moshe? Backbreaking labor, servitude, horrendous conditions. So they couldn't hear Moshe. But Pharaoh, he's sitting in his palace, being fed grapes probably. That's what the picture shows. Fanned with some big branch. Listen, we have AC, what should I tell you? So why? Because the Jewish people couldn't hear, so Pharaoh can't hear? What in the world does that mean? And from here, we're going to learn an incredible lesson. And I'd like to ask one more beautiful question. Question I hope and pray no one in this room should ever be posed with the following question. But for a moment, in our minds, in our thoughts, let's go and think about the following question. You're in a doctor's office. Doctor, you're not feeling well, something's wrong. The doctor comes back, sits you down, sits your spouse down, says, I have some terrible news for you. You have a difficult choice you have to make. Okay? You brace yourself for the worst. The doctor looks at you and says, the only way we could heal you is either you're going to have to lose your sight or you're going to have to lose your hearing. Choice is yours. We, the medical team, could do it either way. But one of them has to go. Either you're going to live your life without being able to see or live your life without being able to hear. Discuss it and let us know. I think if we were to think about this for a moment, almost everyone would conclude, what's more important? Your sight or your hearing? I don't know if anyone has ever been in Tel Aviv. There's a blind museum. Incredible experience. Next time everyone is in Israel, put it on the list. Incredible experience. But I believe we'd all come to the conclusion, what's more important? Our eyes or our hearing? I think we'd all conclude our eyes are more important. Yes, hearing is important, but to not be able to see sounds unbearable. Yet, the Talmud teaches us the following. If one goes and blinds another, God forbid, terrible accident, you blind another person. What do you have to pay him? What's the compensation you owe this person for blinding him? Says the Talmud, the value of his eye. How we calculate that, difficult discussion, leave it on the side. The value of his eye. Continues the Talmud. If you make someone deaf, what do you have to pay him? So we'd all assume the value of his hearing, his ears. That is not what the Talmud says. It says you have to pay demei, the value, kulo, of his entire being. If you blind him, you pay for his sight. You make one deaf, he's a dead man. Says the Talmud, a deaf person is considered dead. Not a blind person, a deaf person. Why? Didn't we all just agree that our sight is more important than our hearing? From here comes along some of the greatest Jewish thinkers to ever step foot on this planet and explain the following fascinating idea. Yes, perhaps in a handicap, we would assume sight is more important than hearing. But what does it mean to lose your hearing? What does it mean to not be able to hear? Not be able to hear has two connotations. And King David HaMelech, in Tehillim and Psalms, writes the following. Listen, my daughter, look, and lend me your ear. Listen, look, and lend me your ear. Asks the Sfas Emes, the Ger Rebbe, I don't understand. He just said, listen, look, lend me your ear. Lend me your ear is the same thing as listen. What is David HaMelech, what is King David teaching us? And from here we're going to understand why Moshe's lesson of redemption literally fell on deaf ears by the people, Jewish people, as well by Paroi. And you know what it's going to mean to all of us in one moment? This is going to hopefully be the key to live a life of a little bit more serenity, peace, tranquility, connected, uplifting, breathing easier. David HaMelech writes, listen, look, lend me your ear. Lend me your ear does not mean the same thing as listen. Everyone here is listening, but some people have lent me their ears. Everyone hears, but some people are internalizing. Internalizing and listening are not the same thing. How often are we sitting there, someone asks us something, we nod our head, yeah. 4 seconds later we say, what? Did we hear them? We heard them. The words went in our ears. We were shimmy, we heard, but you know what we were lacking? Lending our ear. We didn't internalize. If one makes another one deaf, you have to pay for his entire body. You know why? Because that person is a dead man. He can never change. Why can he never change? Because he can't hear. What does it mean he can't hear? He can't internalize the lessons that are being told to him. Of course he can hear maybe. You hear music, you hear someone talking. But there's so much more depth to hearing than just the words that come out of our mouth. Internalizing them means that much more. So why did the Jewish people not hear the lesson of redemption from Moshe? They heard it. They heard it. He was talking to them. They didn't internalize it. Why not? Says the verse as we just said, backbreaking labor, servitude. What does that mean? When you're so enwrapped in something, a slave mentality, you can't internalize what someone is telling you. Because you can't let those words mean something to your life. Pharaoh is sitting in his palace. And yes, opulent, calm, collected. So why can't he hear the message of Moshe? Of course he can hear it. He can't internalize it. Why not? Because he as well was enwrapped in what? Taking over the world. You could be enwrapped. You could be a slave to many things. You could be a slave with backbreaking labor and building pyramids, or one could be a slave to his computer and to his work. And we all know stories. People, they're slaves to their jobs, and who suffers? Their spouse, their children. How does that make any sense? Those are people that are deaf. What does it mean they're deaf? They can't internalize what's going on around them. The messages go in their ears, but they can't internalize it. So what does this mean to all of us? We all live busy lives. As we started to come out on a Saturday night, to connect a little bit, to grow a little bit is incredible. Says the Sfas Emes, and he concludes with the following words. No one here wants to die thinking, I checked in, I was a slave to my office. I was a slave to my technology. I was a servant to something. We all want to live lives connected with our families, connected with the people around us, and connected to God. So how do we do that? The way we do that is by doing what we're doing here tonight. We don't want to be deaf. We want to be able to connect. In order to do that, you have to stop. You have to turn off the busy world around us. You have to lower the music of the crazy insanity that goes on. Come together and connect. Listen. Learn. Grow. And most importantly, just be. What do you mean? Yeah, just be. When's the last time that we just were? Just there. Present. Mindful. Relaxed. Calm. Where does that come from? That comes from being able to go away from being a slave to society, to be a servant to our jobs and to all of our obligations, and rather to connect internally to God, to our families, to everyone around us. And of course, the Jewish calendar, the Jewish day is filled with opportunities to not be a slave to the world around us. Prayer, what's prayer? What's prayer? So a beautiful story, a very short story, and I know we're running late. We're going to wrap up in a moment. There was a farmer in Israel that walked into a yeshiva, not irreligious, and he watched a whole yeshiva praying, and he walked out. And someone said, "What did you see?" He said, "I saw many people praying, and there was this one old man in the front who was talking to someone." I said, "What?" That old man in the front was Rav Elia Lapian. You know who he was talking to? God. Prayer sometimes gets lost in the Jewish text, in the words. And we feel like we're just reading a script and we're like throwing words somewhere. But what's really prayer? Prayer is to stop and talk to God. To talk to Him. Like I'm talking to you one-on-one. No one less than Rav Moshe Chaim Lutzato, the Metzilas Yesharim writes this. That's prayer. So if we pray in the right way, you know what we're doing? Turning off our phone, turning off the computer, we're shutting all the noise around us, and we're connecting to God, and we're saying, I'm not going to be a slave to society. I'm not going to be a servant to my job. I'm going to be mindful and connected, and I will never be deaf. So to wrap everything up, and just one more detail, those who have studied and have heard that many mitzvos, many commandments, have a backdrop that the intent you're supposed to have when you do them is to remember God took us out of Egypt. And many people wonder, when I wrap my phylacteries on my arm, when I make Kiddush Friday night, all have the same reason to remember God took us out of Egypt. What in the world does that mean? Now we can understand it. Because it all has the same thread. We don't want to be Paro. We don't want to be one that's so disconnected that the greatest message ever could be told to us, but we're not internalizing it. We're deaf to the world around us. So I'll end by wrapping it all up. Everyone here is on that downward escalator, but they're not staying still. You know how I know that? Because if you were staying still, you'd be home on the couch watching the child. Listen, I'm sure there's many great Jews doing that, and they're going to get up soon. But to get up and come out, yes, good food, good music, good drinks, to connect, to learn, to grow, means you're climbing that downward escalator. It means no one here wants to die without an accomplishment. And the accomplishment could be in your own personal life, you and your spouse, you and your children, having a wonderful Jewish family. That's an incredible accomplishment. And perhaps more importantly, as we learn from Moses and as we think how great Moshe is, let's allow the Jewish day, the Jewish calendar, events like these, our prayers, our commandments, our mitzvahs, let's allow them to let us connect, be more mindful, more relaxed, less distracted, less a slave to society around us. And God willing, if we all continue step by step, growing a little bit each day, ultimately, we will reach that pinnacle of being great people. Similar to Moshe, the greatest human being to ever live, fulfilling our potential. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Rislansky. So two quick announcements. First of all, I want to thank